Welcome back to the Tasting Room, episode 4. We are 4 episodes old.
We're already 4?
Already 4. Technically 5. We did a 0, but again, it gets confusing.
Right.
We're 4 episodes old.
Man, it's been already a really fun journey.
It
already
has.
a lot of really cool conversations. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Eric. I think that he's going to be able to speak into a lot of different history and answer a lot of really cool questions of what has brought him to the point where he is.
And if you couldn't tell by the title of this episode or the drop of the first name, Eric Marshall, founder, probably head brewer still, I would assume.
I'm going to call him Master
Brewer. There you go.
Or
Marshall's
Godfather Brewer.
Yeah. Or the Godfather, although he doesn't wear a pinky ring.
No, or a gold chain necklace.
Yeah,
I was
none of
kind
that.
You know,
we got to work on that look for him.
Yeah.
We've got to eventually get him to the Godfather look.
That's right.
We'll do that. But let's just get right into it. It was a great conversation. We had great whiskey, great beer. It was just great all the way around.
It's a great listen.
Yeah.
And I think that you're going to have a lot of fun.
I do too. Eric Marshall after the break.
Hey, I'm John. I'm one of the partners here at Grassfire Creative. We are a production company. We do animation, video production, live production, anything you need to creatively tell both your story and your business's story. Along with the content that we create, we also provide the strategy behind how to get it in front of the eyeballs that matter to you. We're located right in the middle of the United States in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so no matter where you are, we're just a short flight away. Bottom line is we are very excited to both meet you and tell your business's story. Please do reach out to us one of the ways below via email or phone number, and check out more about us at our website, grassfirecreative.com.
Well, welcome back to the tasting room. I'm really excited for this week, John.
No, we're still going.
All right,
you did it on the
good.
first time.
Yeah, I
you
did
didn't have
do
to
it
do a second take.
That's
Eric,
right.
Had to do a second take every time, but because you're here, he got it on the first hit.
Well, so we're excited to welcome Eric Marshall of Marshall Brewing Company,
The Godfather.
Yeah, the Godfather of the beer.
Would you like to kiss my?
There you go.
That's not my thing.
My taproom employees were saying, you should ask him, does he wear a pinky ring?
Yeah. I've said something like that before, and I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that's not my style.
How you been, man?
Good. You know, it's been a wild ride the last year and a half or so, and so it's we're back in the fall where festivals and everything have happened. So, once again, it's like that feeling of Oktoberfest being done feels so great, which it's been like 2 years since that feeling. So, it's a constant thing. Every year you hit that, and then it's kind of, you can breathe, and move forward a little bit.
I don't think anyone told Oktoberfest about COVID.
I don't think it existed out there.
That was just a party like COVID, like 2020 just didn't happen to Oktoberfest.
Yeah, it was wild because I was constantly like the only person in the tent wearing a mask, which people may think's weird, but my kids can't get vaccinated yet, but fortunately next week they can.
Right on.
So you do everything, and we unfortunately lost my father-in-law back in January from COVID. So it's been a very very follow the line for everything as cautious as possible on that front. So
yeah, I respect that though.
Yeah,
that's the way it should be. So you can go ahead and get started. I'm gonna start pouring. I went different. So I'd been bringing these like bottle picks from the bourbon group I'm in and all this stuff, and people can't buy them at home. This little thing or big thing, Early Times, is my favorite cheap bourbon.
Right on. I'm
it's
excited.
Like $24 for this bottle.
Right on. Where's it from?
Awesome.
That's a great question. Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey.
Another one in that cheap range is, have you tried the Jim Beam bottled and bond?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
yet.
I have.
Really good.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. It's
Right on.
really
Next on
good.
the
It was
list.
one of those that somebody brought and kind of surprised me, and it was like, damn, that's
Eric,
that's
were you
all
going to
right.
want ice in yours?
Sure, I'll take a little ice.
Okay.
Maybe I'll give a little go first, and then throw me one ice cube.
Ooh, almost knocked it over. You pass that down,
All right.
and then once you get your ice there.
Well, I'll start off with my first question. Eric, just For people listening, your history with the craft beer industry in Tulsa is really thick. Could you tell us a little bit of how, I don't know if I've actually ever asked this of you in person, but tell us a little bit about your history, how you actually got into brewing and what the scene of Tulsa looked like back then.
Well, so a lot of credit, I guess, just getting into brewing. I kind of started like a lot of people did in home brewing, but it was through my older brother. When he was in law school, he started doing a little home brewing just for like tailgates. He went to OU for law school, and we both went to TU. He's a little bit older than me, but tailgating wasn't a thing at TU, so he had to learn that.
We're trying to make it a thing,
right?
still,
Yes,
but it's just not quite there.
And I've been trying to make it a thing too for so
yeah.
long. I love the family-friendly atmosphere of it now, and my kids love that.
Mhm.
But anyways, so he got into it a little bit there, and so it just kind of happened to be one of those things where. Freshman year of college, I was down there at the time, and he's like, "Hey, help me do this," and started to get a little interesting. But then I went and studied. I studied international business in German at TU, and went and studied my junior year of college in Germany, and lived with a family that didn't speak English, and really was just immersed in the language and culture, and lived right near one of the large German breweries called Kronbacher. There, and it was the first time. Basically, as part of our program, we had to do something in this orientation period where our professor from TU came over, and we had to do something big and write about it. And I was like, well, I like beer. I've never toured a brewery. I've done a little brewing, and so went and in a very broken American accent asked them if I could take a tour, and they were like, yeah, we've got a group coming in. So just come on through. And so I went, and it was just super fascinating. And so I started as part of that, do something. You also had to write kind of a paper about it and everything. And so I started to research a little bit more into brewing and the history and tradition in Germany and all of that, and just really kind of fell in love with that aspect of it. Obviously, also being able to drink fresh local beer right from the source right there was also great. And so when I came back from my senior year of college, I was over there for about 7 months, traveled extensively, drank a lot of good beer, and just got back, and we had our friends down at Chalk doing their thing, and that was really it for the most part in Oklahoma. And so just kind of saw a need and an opportunity at that same time. My brother had moved back from law school, and my dad converted my bedroom at our house into a home pub. So thanks,
I love
Dad.
that.
Right on.
So we convinced Dad if he invested some money in a nice homebrew system, then he could serve his own beer at his pub. So we had beer lines running up from the basement. It was really, it's really cool.
That's very
awesome.
professional.
Yeah, right. And so just got really serious into it, and then saw a need and an opportunity, and happened to mention to some family friends that was interested in brewing as a career. This is, if you want to call it a sign or a calling or whatever, it was actually at a charity function at our church. And they were like, oh, well, our son's best friend is a German brewmaster who lives in Munich. We'll have to get you guys in contact. And it was like,
what are the odds of
wow,
that? Right. Yeah.
So this guy had come over and lived with their son for a year, and he was the consultant that opened Royal Bavaria, which is a little brew pub, German restaurant in Moore, Oklahoma. And so he had a soft spot in his heart for Oklahoma. So he actually called me the next day and was like, hey, tell me what you're wanting to do. Mm-hmm. How can I help? Like, I love these people. I love Oklahoma. I want to do what I can do. So through him, once I graduated, I went back over to Germany and met up with him and kind of outlined sort of course of study, an apprenticeship. And that was what led me into the World Brewing Academy, which is the same program Austin ended up doing. But then independently through him, was able to arrange a bunch of apprenticeships all over Germany. So once I finished that program, then I went and hooked up with a buddy of his who was a secondhand equipment dealer. And so we did a bunch of small projects together, and he actually ended up being the guy who helped me find our brew house and do the install and all that stuff. But then through a bunch of his contacts and through this other guy, I got the opportunity to go work or at least shadow in 6 or 7 different breweries throughout Germany. And so for me, it was an excuse to go back to Germany and have some fun.
Yep.
But also, an opportunity to learn, from a tradition that's obviously very well known for brewing. And so it was a great opportunity, had a great time. But then once I moved back, I also knew that I wanted to get some experience in the craft side of things. So got back that would have been November of 2005. I think that's right. And just threw a resume out to a few different places, and then literally got a call that afternoon from Victory up in Pennsylvania. Did a phone interview the next day, got offered a job the day after that, and said, well, like if I'm moving halfway across the country, like I want to at least come check the place out and all that. Went out there, fell in love with it. Great opportunity from 2 guys who took a similar route, went to Germany and studied over there. And it was a great opportunity to really go to a brewery that was making great beer, obviously rooted in sort of that German tradition. And also be at an opportunity where they're going through a rapid amount of growth and learning how you balance quality and making sure the product's right as you go through those growth measures and everything. So it was a great opportunity, and still have very fond memories of my time there, and still am upset that we don't get Victory in Oklahoma, because I'd love to be able to continually buy some Prima Pills, but despite my cries for that to Ron and Bill, haven't seen that yet. So we had some in Arkansas for a little while. So we got to, when we were distributing over in Little Rock, we got to do a kind of a co-event with them when they launched.
That's cool.
Because I got them hooked up with our distributor over there, which was really cool. And so, I'm still in contact with a few of those folks. But most of the guys that I worked with have now gone on to do other things as well. And so,
I know that sound. Yeah. That's a fantasy football.
I don't know what it is. It's Dak Prescott was upgraded to
there
active,
we go.
So
hey,
now I get the choice of, do I start him or do I stick with Matt Stafford? I think I'm sticking with Stafford.
Ooh, that's a tough one. You got 2.
That is a tough one. I've had Dak Prescott going, up until last week when he was out, and he's edged out Stafford every week. But I think I'm going to stick with Stafford.
Okay. Now Michael Gallup is coming back for the Cowboys sometime.
He is. Yes, that's true. That's true. But yeah, so once I my kind of original plan was to spend some time doing that, but then I also really wanted to get some experience in a brew pub, just as a smaller setting. But you talked about Elliot being on the show. Elliot and I became friends basically like right when he opened McNally's, was right as I was finishing up at TU. And so my dad, who is the classic, hey, let me tell you about what my son's getting ready to do, and doting on me, which thank you, but I'm also the kind of person that,
you love that.
I don't. But that was a great opportunity, because then Elliot kind of took an interest in that, because he had said, hey, kind of the whole, Frank Zappa is like every great place needs their own beer and whatever. I can't remember the full quote, but so I went back with some buddies later on that evening, and we just struck up this conversation and just built a really solid friendship. And so we remained in contact, the whole time I was doing this. And by his encouragement, basically, he said, the time's right. You need to come back. You need to get this going. I'll get you introduced to, the right people to help with the investing side, to help with the wholesale, everything. And so it was really his persuasion to get this going that encouraged me to get back and do it at that point. So it was probably the worst time in craft beer history to start a brewery, because right as we were getting going, we hit a this huge hop crisis where one of the big suppliers like burned to the ground. This was 2008.
Yeah.
We had horrible crop years for barley, so prices in hops basically went from like an average of like $3 to $5 a pound to upwards of like $40 a pound.
Good Lord.
Really averaging at that time around $20. And so I guess
just to kind of give a point of reference, what are they now?
$20 is on the very high end right now. I would say $20 to $22 is some of those like, hard to find, hard to get your hands on type of stuff. But I would say 10 to 15 is probably more of the average. You can find some a little lower, and some a little higher. But yeah, so. But that was kind of balanced with, the timing being right here.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always like to say things start on the coast and work their way to Oklahoma. And that was very true with craft beer as well. But in hindsight, being able to kind of build our pricing at those higher numbers was a positive for us because we didn't have to change price. We didn't change prices until I think we changed prices for the first time on our stuff like a couple of years ago. Wow. And that was the persuasion of, everything else going in the market. And so that benefited us to keep things consistent and be able to play ball, at some of these levels. And so, so when we started, we were blazing our own trail, and, that was relevant in, trying to convince people that, hey, there's a local brewery here in Tulsa doing this thing, trying to say, hey, we're not making 3-2 beer. And, oh, by the way, health department, like I know you have these great restrictions in place to basically, keep the consumer safe. But there's also some of the stuff that like is not super applicable to a brewery. So we had to kind of educate on that front. And honestly, there were some things that we ended up having to do that I continued to fight for 6 or 7 years to get some leniency on some other things for future people starting up. But then also, just navigating some of the stuff with the city and licensing and, that's all before even getting into all the legislative change stuff. And so it was definitely blazing a trail in a lot of ways. I'm sure I had just this beautiful, gorgeous head of hair at that point. That's also a lie, but I don't have much more hair.
Pictures.
Yeah, right.
That's not true.
It's not true. But definitely, I always like to joke that I probably lost a couple of years off my life, and definitely whatever hair I had left at that point. But at the end of the day, the timing was right. We got to be on the forefront of kind of the educational side of craft beer here in Tulsa. So obviously, a lot of credit goes to Elliot, to guys like Elliot, to even before him, Jeff Castleberry at Kaz's, who was bringing in, some of this stuff that we got to kind of be on the front end of saying, hey, this is what we mean by creating a culture of craft beer. This is what a local brewery does. And this is what, so a lot of that stuff, I'm really grateful that we got to be on the front end of that because, the reason that we started the brewery wasn't from the standpoint of like, I drink a lot of beer all the time. It really was cultural. And, I love your all's slogan, the crafted for community, because it very much is about that. And, for us, it's always been, we want to make a positive impact in the community. We want to be good partners in the community because the people who support us are the people in this community. And if we don't support back, then what good are we doing here? And so, that's always been a staple for us. And so to be able to kind of be on the front end and also, honestly, to weather some of the burden so that we can make it easier for others so that we can continue to build the culture was also very important for us too.
I like to ask about fear a lot, apparently, because we're all entrepreneurs here in different levels. And so I'm curious when, you have Elliot championing.
That's a hard word to say, but you did it.
You have Elliot behind you, right? Pushing you, telling you now's the time. He can get you, involved with the right people. But like you said, you were blazing your own trail. It hadn't been done here. So what was, if you can remember back to your mindset at that point, What
He's
was
not
the
that old.
Well, but I mean, you've slept a few times and had a few beers since then. But do you remember what the level of fear, anxiety, whatever it was about opening the first real brewery in the Tulsa area? Like, was there a God? This might not work because it's not here.
Yeah, I mean, so my mom. There's entrepreneurial spirit in my family. So my mom started when I was a kid making like hair bows and headbands out of a room in our house, expanded to the garage. Then, fast forward now 35 years or something like that. She has the largest children's clothing store in the Midwest. So
that's awesome.
I grew up kind of in that environment, seeing what it takes. And
which helps.
I often joke that my mom in my family is the only one that really understands, all the ins and outs. But, I was fortunate too that my brother and I have such a great relationship, and honestly, he's probably at the end of the day my biggest cheerleader. And also I think a lot of people can say that, hey, my brother's my hero, but he is in a lot of regards. And there's comfort in knowing that he's always had my back and always, from the legal side of things and knowing what we can and can't do and all the research and everything that he put into that front. The support, honestly, that we got from Joe Pritchard and Mike Lawley down at Chalk too, and helping to, because they wanted to see that side of things grow. There was a lot of comfort there. But yeah, I mean, when we started like raising money to start this brewery, and I'm going to ask family and friends and like my friends' parents,
it's a harrowing experience
to invest money in me more than this actual concept. Yeah, man, that was pretty scary because at the end of the day, it's like, okay, if this doesn't work out, I still have to face you the rest of my life.
Like, it's a pressure that people that haven't done that just can't comprehend.
Yeah, and
it keeps me up at night.
Sure,
it's unreal.
I will say, I mean, let's see, I started when I was 27. When I started the brewery when I was 26, 27, and so part of me, it was probably I probably hadn't lived enough life to realize how stupid I was at that point. Right. So, there's a level of that, but at the same time, that's also the positive. And so I will say that, growing up, I've always been pretty laid back, pretty even keeled. I am a way more of an anxious person now than I was pre all of that stuff. And I used to always give my brother shit because he's a pretty anxious by nature. And now I feel like sometimes I rival him in that. But yeah, I mean, it's a level that people just don't understand. I think people end up at the end of the day, they see, oh man, we see your beer at Quick Trip and Reese's and on tap, and man, things ought to be going great. Well, yeah, I mean, we've got good distribution. We've been able to create some great relationships to keep the beer flowing. But at the end of the day, like, we are in a manufacturing operation. This is volume.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, our volume isn't like a lot of the other people. So there's still a lot of challenges that people don't understand to that level. And, you're constantly managing different things. You're managing people, you're managing finances, you're managing investors, you're managing customers, you're managing wholesalers. And, that's there's a lot of different moving parts that certainly fear is a good word there. And our thing has always been, and I'm fortunate that my guys understand this, and Wes, who's our director of sales.
I love Wes to death. He's one of my favorite humans.
Wes gets it too. Yeah, I'm with you, and Wes gets it too. And we very much, he's had my back on a lot of things. Most things I always have his back, but we're in a lockstep on a lot of, how from the ground up, we built the thing is relationship based, and I think that helps to kind of suppress some of those fears a little bit when you have these relationships and you understand that the people that you're dealing with have that faith and trust in you. That helps to kind of calm. It brings a level of fear, but it also helps to calm those things at the same time too.
Yeah,
and the relationships too that we've built over the years to be able to not have the fear, not be afraid to ask for help, to ask advice, and so on, which is, at the early stages, there is a little bit of pride on that side of things. But as you start to grow and learn that, man, there's a lot of stuff I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that's important. That's an important thing.
Well, and,
for sure.
and I can attest to how open Eric is to that. And I want to thank you for that, because being open and really he was in the very beginning and still to this day, whenever I have a question or don't know the answer, usually you're the first person I go to. And in the very beginning, when we hadn't opened up our brewery, you were a wealth of knowledge and basically my sole mentor in the industry. And I don't know if I would have been able to be what we are now without your help and without your guidance. So
really is a godfather.
Yeah, he is.
I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think that's one thing that's important to me and important. And that's kind of a great segue. A couple of beers you asked to bring. Let's get into when you all asked, you were like, hey, bring maybe a beer that's inspiration and then something else. And so the first thing that popped in my head and is a great point to that was just something. Sierra Nevada is one of those breweries to me that's just, I think now as the industry's grown and it's become much more hyper local, that Sierra Nevada gets overlooked oftentimes. It's still
and sometimes gets a bad rap.
Sometimes it gets a bad rap, but I will say that one thing that kind of speaking to that point and why I jokingly said, "Oh, what a great segue," is if we can emulate some of the stuff that Sierra's done, and one thing I always like to point, and it's very much a highlight of how the industry is Ken Grossman, who started Sierra Nevada. Has built it to what it is. They have way more money now to play with in terms of research and development, in terms of things that they could use as a competitive advantage to really just crush a lot of us. They have done the opposite and have shared everything that they've done. They go and spend money and they share everything that they've done to be able to make the craft beer culture better, because they understand from a bigger picture. Yes, at the end of the day, our pie is a certain size, and everybody's piece is what it is. Yeah. And at the end of the day, business, you want that pie obviously to be a little bit bigger. They also understand the bigger that we can make the pie, the better it is. The bigger the piece.
Right. Yeah.
And I very much love that, and I think that you'll see that just across the board in craft beer. And so when we started, I knew that, hey, blazing the trail, like, did I do everything right? Nope. Is there a way that by me sharing what I did wrong will save somebody a lot of heartache and time and money?
Certainly did for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, does that make the whole environment better? Yes, it does. Yeah. And in turn makes it better for all of us, right? Better for the drinker. It's better for, the camaraderie within the industry. And that's one thing that I really love that's been able to develop. You come over to our block on, most Thursday or whatever, you'll see, I'll come out of the office with my little nerd hole that I hide in all the time now. Unfortunately, I don't get to do the fun stuff that I started the brewery to do. Now I get to deal with all the stuff nobody wants to deal with. But all around the corner and sitting on the dock will be some of these guys, along with some of the Solera folks, and, maybe Glenn from Renaissance or Jake or one of those guys from Heirloom, and I just love that. I love the fact that we are where we are, and if you had come to me and I was like, no, I'm not going to tell you, whatever, like.
I doubt we'd be neighbors.
Maybe we wouldn't be neighbors, but at the same time, like, maybe something would have happened and you would have gone a different route. And it just, there's a lot of things that I like to say. It's like the more that we can work together to create this culture here locally, the better. When we started, there was so much of like a microscope on us because you're making alcohol in Oklahoma. That's you're kind of the devil. You're kind of the devil at that point, right? Yeah. And so, we don't want, by people not understanding how things worked, at least getting to that point where we were, if we regress in that regard, that puts the microscope even tighter on everybody else. And so the more that we can up the game and continue to, help each other collaboratively, the better it is. And that paid forward too in the legislative side of things. So all that thing started was, we wanted to be able to offer tours and samples, because when we started, we technically couldn't even sample our own product out of the tank, right? So it started as a change to be able to just offer somebody a sample when they walked in the door. Again, part of the education piece. After a 3-year fight, we got that changed, but then it turned into a bigger thing as all the other pieces started to realize, okay, we can modernize the laws here and look at what the craft brewers did with the sampling thing. And so that, as that kind of took shape, realized real quick that A, I don't have the time to live at the Capitol again like I did for the sampling deal, and B, my brother is a practicing lawyer and I don't have the money to pay him to deal with this all the time. So we were able to kind of organize a bunch of the other breweries to get this thing going, and it's had a drastic impact on the industry and the culture. I mean, because again, we couldn't have tap rooms, or the tap rooms, once a loophole was found where we could have 3-2 tap rooms, that still just wasn't really it, you know? And so now we have this great atmosphere, great culture, great scene with all these great breweries. It's a great time to be a beer drinker in Oklahoma. And
we'll pass one of those down here.
Yep, for sure.
So we're Eric, what is this beer?
This is a Sierra Nevada Celebration, which is their fresh hop IPA, and this was kind of one of those things.
Cheers, boys!
Yeah, cheers. I was sitting there. I had to run by the grocery store last night, and I saw it, and I was like, "Man, I haven't seen this in a long time," and it's just such a great beer.
I think Pale Ale is the best beer they make. Period. But I think I would agree. This is my favorite beer. Yep. If there can be the difference,
I think you can make an argument for any one of their beers. I mean, I was sitting there talking about Bigfoot the other day.
Another great beer,
and some crazy things that I've done after drinking some Bigfoot.
Did you care to tell us,
especially in college? But
if he remembers,
no one's listening. You can tell us.
I've told the story too many times. But I've got, several vintages still of that. And it's just like, God, it's such a great beer. But then you can make obviously Pale Ale is the gold standard.
Yeah.
But this Torpedo, I mean, you just go down the list.
So good.
Like everything they make is great. And
still family owned and operated.
Again, great people. Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah. NPR, you hear those commercials, like still family owned, operated, and argued over. And it's like, God, that is so true. Yeah. Can't tell you how many knockdown fights I've gotten in with family over stuff.
And this is a seasonal. It's only winter, right?
It is, yeah. So it's their fresh hop ale. So it just ends up being, when they can harvest the fresh hop, the wet hop, they can throw it in and get it out just in time for the holidays.
You know what I love about that is, I think in most people's mind, if you try to make a seasonal calendar of what kind of beers are released when, this time of year starts, you leave the Oktoberfest and the Marzens and the Dunkels behind, and you start going towards the stouts and all the heavy beers. And yet here they come with a fresh hop IPA. And I'm like, thank you. Like, that's fantastic.
Yeah. It's still a great time to drink an IPA.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Is there ever a bad time to drink an IPA?
No, there's really not.
It's fantastic.
Well, going back to what you were saying about
sorry. I was just gonna put it down a little bit.
Yeah. My seat's a little lowered this week or something.
I thought you were getting too big of a head, so I had to lower you down a little bit.
Okay. Sure. But yeah, like a great example of what you were saying with Sierra Nevada being open and really developing. Our little corner of the brewery community, especially with what you've done for us and whatnot. I just want everybody to know, like, you've brewed my beer when I was in one of my most crucial moments in life, and you didn't have to do that. You brewed twice, you transferred a couple of times, and kegged my beer when I couldn't, and that I will never forget that. And that's just something that's not every industry players or business
you don't help
owners.
each other like that.
No.
Yeah. You should. Like, humans should do that.
There's some things that are bigger than that, and at the end of the day, we're people, and we're part of the same industry. There's a lot of love in this community, and in our specific community too. And you hit a point where some of those things just don't matter. And at the end of the day, there's a humanity side of it. And when you're in a position where you have a specific knowledge or skill set that at that moment in time can be offered to alleviate some stress or anxiety or whatever, I'm just so fortunate that I was in that position to be able to help at that time, because nobody needs to, at that moment of darkness, nobody needs to worry about how to press on and things that at that moment in time don't mean anything.
Right. Well, I'm very appreciative of that. But so I really want to know, you've been in business at your brewery for what, 13 years now?
13 and a half years.
That's crazy.
No.
That's really, really cool. Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, cheers, thank you.
And you've seen Tulsa really grow. You've seen the McNally's group grow, and all of the restaurant and scene of our culture really expand and become a really cool spot in the Midwest and in the middle of our country. What I really want to know, what is your most, I don't want to call it prideful moment, but what is the thing within the last 13 years that you can pinpoint and go, dang, that was awesome?
Man, that's kind of loaded. That's heavy.
That's
man.
a big one.
Yeah.
That's a whale of a question there.
Getting some tears going. No, I'm just kidding. No, there's a lot of things.
Sometimes
I think
sometimes I can be light, and sometimes I can be heavy.
I think one thing that was really cool, that just kind of came out of nowhere, was we got an award from the Department of Labor a few years ago for essentially like creating an industry that is a huge tax revenue generator. And to kind of have that recognition, I guess it's not something that it's not something that we necessarily like. I mean, you don't go out and seek that, but to just get a call out of nowhere and say,
you're not submitting resumes to the Department of Labor
because of from the standpoint of when we started, the challenges that we face just from the exterior of Oklahoma, in being, very buckle of the Bible belt, conservative, like you don't drink alcohol here, let alone you don't make alcohol. To then have, politicians basically saying thank you for the role that you've played in creating this was a huge deal. And I mean, at the end of the day, that was a culmination of also the whole modernization of alcohol laws that caused the industry to expand more, and everything there. So kind of as you start to look back on some of those things, it's not necessarily individual to the brewery, it's on the whole. And because at the end of the day, it's how are we making this community better? How are we, getting to this point? And, like I said, we've always had a focus. We've always wanted to be able to use the brewery to do great things in the community. I know you guys do, Solera does, all these breweries do. And the more that we're doing this, even individually, it makes such a huge impact in this community. And I think when you start doing something like this, people just think the negative immediately and don't realize how much positive comes from this and how much positive there is in that side of things. And so, I mean, to be able to do that and now to have a platform, like you said, this Sunday I'm working the tap room because my daughter's teacher is stuck in Spain right now.
That's a crazy story,
right? And so now I'm kind of becoming a fake ass like immigration attorney too, without going to law school. But at the end of the day, it's like, these are great people who have come to live in Tulsa that have now run into a situation. But I'm able to use that position to help out in some way to alleviate some anxiety or whatever, but also have a little fun doing it too,
absolutely.
right? And
what you said before, it's the fun part. You don't get to do that much anymore.
exactly,
right?
exactly. Yeah. But it's those kind of things that now that we've progressed to this point, we're able to do, that you guys are able to do, that Solera, that Nothing's Left, that all these guys, and so that's great. Another thing I will say too is when we had that fire back in February,
I was going to ask about
to be the recipient of the love from all of you guys was, I mean, like I'm tearing up just thinking about that, because it's just like, again, sort of you hit a dark hour and then all of a sudden, everybody in your circle
they have your
comes
back.
to say, man, we're feeling this with you. And, you guys and Solera both offered, hey, you want to use our tap room as a pop-up if we get to that point. And, Nothing's Left, sent a bunch of pizzas to the local fire station.
That's awesome.
That night. I mean, that straight up made me cry.
Our bar, Josh Royal did the whole
our bar and Josh.
night.
Yeah. And so it's you just start to feel to be the recipient. You don't want to be in that position,
right.
but then to feel the recipient of that love was probably one of the single greatest things that feelings that I've had overall. And so
take me back to that morning. So like it's a snowy ass day.
It was cold.
Cold as hell.
The kids are home from school because A, quarantine, and B, they wouldn't have been in school anyways because it was 2 degrees and there was, that much ice on the streets. So so I actually went into we had kind of, we were kind of at that time of year, production is what it is. You're just trying to like maintain, but also like get ready for spring and summer.
When was it? February?
Here we go. February 16th.
Okay. Yep.
So, because it was so cold, we have our water filtration system, after so many gallons through the thing, back flushes to basically clear out the media that's in there, right? To extend the life of that. So at one point during the day before, that thing back flushed and the water froze in the pipes. And so I stopped by at some point that morning just to check on everything, because I told the guys, like, hey, like, nobody needs to get out. We're fine on production. Like, just stay home. Enjoy a snow day, right? Like you're a kid in school.
Right.
So I show up and then the pipe's frozen. So there's water everywhere on the inside because of that. And so I'm back and forth between Home Depot getting a couple of parts so that I can, do some plumbing and figure this whole problem out. Get that all figured out. One of our guys, Tim, who was an off-duty fireman, he was there he was like, man, I just had to get out of the house. Sorry if his wife's listening. But he was there doing just some preventative maintenance stuff. And he was like, man, I just had a couple things I wanted to get done, whatever. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to run next door, check on things. And then I'm heading out. So appreciate whatever. So I run into the old man next door who owns the building, and he was like, hey, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to park here for a little bit. I'm dealing with some frozen pipes. And I'm like, hey, we just made the call that, the parking lot's pure ice. Like, we're not going to be open today. It was a Tuesday, I think. We're not going to be open today, so no big deal. Good luck with that. So then I go to, I was at the grocery store because my father-in-law just passed from COVID, and I didn't want my mother-in-law trying to get out. So I was getting some stuff for her, and I get a phone call from Matt Denham down at Solera, and he was like, hey, are you at the brewery? The fire department's trying to get in your building. The building next door is on fire. And I'm like, no, but Tim was there just a minute ago when I left. So this was like 30 minutes after I left. So this is like, 1:30 or something like that. So I called Tim, and Tim's like, oh man, he was like, that's crazy. I just had 2 calls from different firefighter buddies that I missed. So I'll run over there real quick. And it's funny because you can pull up the cameras and see like when Tim runs over there, really? Unlocks the door, and you just see the smoke escape once those windows
from the new tap room.
From the new tap room, yeah. And so I basically, I'm standing. I was like, there's nothing I can do at this point. Yeah. So like, I'm gonna go ahead and just finish checking out here, right? And
but your mind is just not like, there.
Oh, yeah. Shit. In fact, my wife, when I called her and told her, she dropped a a pretty heavy curse word, which is very untypical of her.
Right.
And my kids to this day still, Mommy, you remember that one time you said this word? And she's like, yes.
I do remember.
So
It was justified.
First off, at that point, you're 5 and 8. Why do you even know what those words are? But
Right.
that's another story. But anyway, so then I get there, and thank God for Tim. Like Tim's one of the best people I know. I think, people that know him in the industry know just how awesome Tim is. But Tim's also a pretty soft-spoken guy and everything. But he immediately, jumps into action, grabs a walkie-talkie, so we know what's going on the whole time. Chief Baker from the fire department was so cool and so on top of it, and was filling me in on everything as we're going. And so, at this point, you just kind of got to watch, right? And things just started to
such a weird
things
feeling.
started to progressively get worse. And Tim was kind of like, "Hey, I don't understand what's going on, why they're going defensive." And what had happened was there was like 4 levels of roof, and it was so cold that the fire just kept going, and the roof started to collapse. But their saws were freezing up, so they couldn't even cut through the roof. And so they just hit a point where they realized what the situation was, and they just moved to going defensive and protecting our building. And so you just kind of got to sit there and watch and hope, and we're trying to do what we can do. I remember, some of the news stations were there, and I just remember being like, "Oh, you want to do an interview?" And I remember at one point I did an interview with somebody. Unfortunately, this one didn't air, but I just remember at one point, your train of thoughts just flowing, right? Because I'm sitting there with the anxiety of watching a building that I own potentially burn to the ground. That's accounts for a third of our overall revenue of everything. And I remember I just looked. I was like, at this point, what do you say? Jesus, take the wheel. Fortunately, that one didn't air, but it was funny. One of my good friends is he's in the music business in Nashville and made a pretty big name for himself. And I think I texted him after that. I was like, "Hey, if this interview airs, will you just forward this to Carrie Underwood?" Yeah. So fortunately that didn't, but it was just funny thinking back on that. But it's just, the anxiety of everything. And I think I remember at one point, Katie, who manages the tap room at Solera, at one point, I think she was in tears. And I think that was kind of the first part of you start to feel the love that all the guys around are like, "Hey man, we got your back. We're here for you and whatever we can do." And so, again, it's one of those things that you kind of, you a tragedy, then the silver lining of that just realizes how great the friendships and the camaraderie and everything are in this industry, in this community, and the amount of love from, people that I didn't even know had my phone number, that I received that night was really amazing. And so, it's not something I ever wish anybody to go through. We were down tap room for 4.5 months, and fortunately didn't take any fire damage, but a ton of smoke damage and water damage and some physical damage where they had to bust through the wall and everything. But, later that night, as I've sat there for, 6 hours watching these people put their lives on the line, and, honestly, at the end of the day, to watch the firemen work, it was an honor,
right,
to see firsthand, how the training and protocols and everything that they do was incredible. But at the end of the night, one of those firemen was just apologizing to me, saying, "Man, I'm sorry we couldn't do more." And I'm just like, "Really?
Whoa.
You legitimately saved my building. You legitimately saved the business, and you're apologizing to me?" So, it was a humbling moment on that front. And so, just chalk it up to another notch in the belt of the 2020s, man.
The craziest thing I remember seeing, someone posted a picture, I think it was on Facebook. It was so cold that when the firefighters they would go in shifts, they would get out of their waiter type things, and they would be frozen solid and standing straight up.
Yep.
I was like, holy shit.
Man, and the water, I don't know if you know this, but the water that was coming off of their hoses was creating basically a river into our parking lot
into Solera,
into Solera. But watching them do what they were doing, they were walking through that river, which was at least 12, 16 inches deep at one point in time. And they're just trudging through it like it's nothing. 12 degrees outside, and they're shooting water.
It was crazy.
Everywhere.
One of the guys that I knew that was standing on top of running the water cannon, like on top of the truck right in front of that building. You know, he jumps down and he was literally like a human icicle. And I was just like, good God, man. Like, I hope you're okay after all of this. But like it was crazy because Tulsa Transit brought a bus in so that they could rotate people in to keep them warm.
The community just responded.
It was pretty amazing. But you know, not something I ever want to go through again, but could have been much worse, and nobody got hurt.
Was the first beer you made after that a smoky beer?
No, but
because that would have been ironic and funny.
No, but you better believe that February 16th from now on will be some sort of smoke beer.
Yeah. So I don't know.
I don't forward. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed this, but Lisa was like, I don't know how to not advertise, because our Mrs. Stoutfire day is like two days
ironic.
After that, and she's taking a photo. Like, I'm not kidding, 48 hours later, and she's like, I don't know if I should do this or post it, because she's got like little flames behind a bottle and glass, and
it was that's funny. I didn't know that. I definitely, like, that night
that went through her brain. She was like, I don't know if I should advertise this today.
Funny. That night, I definitely like made a social media post. I think I had drank a Gallo Macho or something like that after, and I was like, well, I said, on the bright side, this beer is straight fire or whatever. And so I think I got a bunch of like, oh, thank God we've been so worried about you or whatever, you know, texts with that.
Yeah,
but it was just like, hey, you know, you just gotta, at some point, you just gotta
open yours.
It, right?
What's in this silver can?
Okay,
not Coors Light.
Yeah, moving on just a little bit. No, this is not Coors Light. This is anything but light.
Okay.
So this is our 4th anniversary ale.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So this is fun for me. I actually haven't had a glass of this.
So
I've had it out of the tank
in a silver can.
Yeah, it hasn't even been labeled yet. So it is a Golden Strong. And
I got to go to a PTA meeting after this.
You'll be the life of that party.
It is at the brewery.
You'll be lubed up.
There you go.
Yeah,
that's one benefit of you know, COVID protocol, not being able to get into the school for PTA meetings is beer garden's a great place for PTA meeting.
But
anyway,
cheers.
Cheers, guys. I'll ask my next question, and then we'll move on to yours.
Right.
And I'll tell you this, Eric, the thing and actually both of your breweries do this, and I respect it and I love it about both of them, is that there was this moment in time, and I don't know if we've left it yet, where I felt like the game in the craft beer industry was how many adjuncts can we put in a beer, right? And we might still be there for some breweries. I'm not going to name any, but like there's a lot of people that do a lot of weird shit when it comes to their beer.
And that's okay.
But it is 100% okay. But both of you, I can come to your brewery and you make beer and you make good beer. And you don't worry about, like, you might age something in a barrel or you might put a thing or two in something, but I can get a lager, I can get a Pilsner, I can get an IPA, I can get, seasonal, a stout or a Marzen or whatever it is, right? And yours, a lot of Belgians and stuff like that. Was that done on purpose for you? Like, was that a thought process?
I mean, absolutely. And like Austin said, there's a place for all that stuff. I mean, that's the great thing about craft beer is craft beer was influenced by every other beer culture in the world. And now, in turn, we are influencing every other beer culture. And so you have a lot of innovation. You have a lot of new things, which I think is just great. Again, like I said, it's a great time to be a beer drinker because there's something new all the time. And, I had the opportunity, a good friend of mine is a quality projects director for Fuller's over in London, and my little sister lives over there. And I've gotten to go visit him a couple of times, but he invited me. The first time we went, to the London Brewers Alliance meeting, and this was like right pre-Olympics
cool.
over there, which was really
I
cool.
was at the Olympics over there.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
It was really cool because you got to kind of hear the discussion of like, okay, we had the conversation with the council, and this is what we're going to have to do with logistics for during this time. So it was kind of an interesting side of things.
Really cool.
But what was really cool was you were in a room, you were at Fuller's, which is one of
Drink a porter.
just great traditional breweries. And then you had all these craft brewers, English craft brewers. So you had guys that were doing traditional English cask style ales from the craft perspective, but then also, people that were doing double IPAs and imperial stouts and all this stuff, which were obviously very influenced by the U.S. craft culture. So it was a very kind of full circle moment, having studied and apprenticed over in Germany, having traveled extensively and just fallen in love with all this traditional stuff, to see how the craft culture now is influencing those traditions, right? And so, again, kind of being drawn to this from the cultural perspective, I love the tradition aspect of it. I love that these beers mean something to this community, that these styles have been brewed for so long, and there's a reason that they've been brewed for so long, because if they're done right, they're pretty fucking good.
Yes, they are.
Excuse my language.
Yeah, you're good.
But
you can get a lot of flavors out of 4 ingredients.
Exactly. And so I'm a sucker. I love tradition. I love, like, if you come over to the brewery right now, they just put Big Jamok on cask, which is probably my favorite beer that ends up going
I'll have
through
to go have it on cask. You'll be back.
That ends up going through the tap room. In fact,
Yeah.
Jake from Heirloom texted, I think Cody the other day, was like, "Hey man, when's Big Jamok coming out on cask?" And so he texted him last night when we decided, okay, we're going to throw it on. Jake was like, we're going to bring everybody over.
Is cask different than, you have one tap that's a sideways tap? That's not cask, right?
No. So it's
what's
different.
the difference in that?
So those side pull, I don't completely understand that. And then I'm going to tell myself, but the side pull it just pours differently and gives more of that like creamier
The head, right? Yeah.
Which a lot of people, American beer, a lot of people are like, I don't want any head on my beer, but when it's poured right, like, I mean, that stuff's like candy.
Right. Well, it's like the slow pour pills at beer.
Exactly. So it's the same. Yeah. That's the same style faucet, essentially.
Okay.
I can maybe explain a little bit of that.
Yeah, do please.
So when you're on that side handle pour system, it's a ball valve that's allowing just enough liquid out at a pace to where there's enough agitation that it's decarbonating the beer as it's going into the glass.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's why it's a slow pour. That's also why it has that real creamy.
Yeah.
Hashtag science.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
But cask is also slower pour and creamy.
So cask is a little different in the sense that it's often referred to as pulling a pint. So really the way that those like diaphragm pumps essentially work is you're displacing, you're essentially pumping air traditionally, but in order to keep the keg fresher longer, we have what's called a cask breather, which pushes a very small amount of CO2 in instead of air to basically push that out. And so those beers typically there's little carbonation to it. So it essentially, and it's warmer. So it essentially brings a lot of the softer characteristics of the beer.
Gotcha.
It's a very traditional sort of form of delivery of the pint. And so it gives that creaminess. You get a little bit of that aeration because there's a little head on the end of it called a sparkler that kind of just pushes out of it's like a sprinkler, so it pushes out all these different heads. So that's where you're getting a lot of that aeration and creaminess, and it's just a different way to enjoy the beer. It's a great example to be like, here's a Big Jamok on tap, and here's a Big Jamok on cask.
I literally am going to leave here and go try that on cask.
Very different, but it's probably one of my favorite, and it's one that's it'll get you. It'll get you if you're not careful. I remember the first time we did it. It was when McNelly's was still doing cask in the sidebar. The first time we ever put that on, because that beer is almost 7%, and cask being that lower carbonation goes down so smooth. And I remember I had 3 of them like real quick, like within 30 minutes. And I remember I looked at Wes and I was like, so you have the company credit card, like you're going to tab out because if I don't go home right now, it's going to hit me, and my wife's going to be pissed that she's got to come pick me up. This was pre-Uber,
right?
So yeah, but I don't even know how we got on to talking about this.
The
traditional side of it. That's what it is.
Let me follow up with. I just want to know, both of you.
Sure.
Did you see? Was there ever something that you saw from an adjunct side that was put into a beer that was that moment where it jumped the shark for you? Was there one thing where it was like, you really just put a potato in a beer? I mean, like whatever it is, right?
Can I just start a multiple choice checklist?
Absolutely.
Here?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember a couple years ago, and I love the Stone Cloud guys. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. There was a picture of them like putting handfuls of like German chocolate cake into a thing, and I was just like,
that's wrong.
Oh man, this is crazy. I didn't have the beer. I heard it was phenomenal, and I'm sure it was because everything they do is great. Yeah. But I just remember seeing that, and from the German Reinheitsgebot purity in me was just like, oh my God, I can't watch this. But again, knowing those guys, I know it was great. And then, it's funny to listen to Matt Denham talk because he just comes down there and he's just like a little kid. He was like, man, I just do crazy shit. I put crazy shit in beer. It's like, what I did. And I'm like, yeah, and I don't get it, but hey, more power to you.
Go for it.
Like, some of the stuff like really hits and some of it doesn't for me, but again, it's creating this culture and creating excitement. And, the great thing is the more that, we have our people, you have your people within our block. I mean, you get a lot of people on Fridays and Saturdays, like people hop around and we're all doing something a little bit
always
different.
Make the loop.
Yeah, we're all doing something a little bit different. And the more that people are doing things that draw people to the area and to craft beer in general, the better. But yeah, I've always I love tradition. I love the traditional aspect of it. We started making the Volksbills so we started the brewery. We made McNally's Pub Ale and Sundown Wheat, and then about 3 weeks later, I think, is when we brought Atlas in. That would have been in April, May, June.
That's still great.
And then in September, we brought Volksbills, and that was always the thing of this is a style near and dear to my heart. I miss drinking fresh German Pilsners. I want this, so I'm brewing this more for myself than anything else.
Great.
In fact, the first keg of that was my bachelor party because, a dumbass, I got married. I started a business, bought a house, and got married in the span of 3 months.
Jeez, what else could you check off the
list?
Right?
No kids. If I'd had a kids, I probably wouldn't be here. So I remember it's okay, yeah, this has to be ready for this. So the first keg of that was for the bachelor party, and we've made it ever since. And I always like to joke that we made Pilsners before they were cool, because now lagers and Pilsners and all that's having a renaissance, which is great. And
thank the Lord.
And it's funny because one of the guys made the comment earlier that just in the last year, Volks is really, it's always had its kind of cult following. We've always had places that have done really well with it, but it's not the beer that people are yeah, we're going to put your Pilsner on.
Right.
It's always it's made enough to make sense, to keep making it. But over the last year, it's definitely increased considerably. And one of the guys made the comment, and we've seen a lot more go to Oklahoma City. And one of the guys made the comment that it's Matt Denham goes over and tells all those Stone Cloud guys that they need to be drinking Volksbills and which is great. I mean, at the end of the day, it's we're going to move that beer to a can at some point. We're kind of slowly shifting.
Awesome. I'm ready for that.
Towards cans, just because, as we've shifted stuff. I mean, it's just starting to financially, it doesn't make sense to bottle. I mean, I can't wait to try that one. I haven't tried that yet. This is the last of Big Jamok bottles because it's moving to a can as well. And so,
is that because of the glass? I heard, and not to.
It has nothing to do with glass shortage. Okay. It literally has to do with because we're bottling less, we're having to buy less, buy less glass, so it's becoming a little bit more expensive. But then also really it becomes, paper products have gone up so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so since we're not buying, 20 to 40,000 6-packs at a time, our price is almost tripled on 6-packs.
Mm-hmm.
So it just starts to get to the economic standpoint of like, it doesn't make sense because right now we're bottling Atlas, Big Jamok, and Volks. And so now
Oktoberfest is cans now?
Yeah, Oktoberfest is cans now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, part of that, it's like, there will be some things I think that we'll keep bottling, and I'm hesitant to get rid of the bottling line because last year everybody ran into this crunch of like, shortage. Oh shit, what are we going to do about cans? And we were always kind of like, well, we don't want to do this, but if we have to, we're in a position where we can move to bottles if so. And it also may open a new opportunity. We may decide that, I'm just spitballing here, we haven't talked about this, but we may decide, okay, well, what if we make a ginger beer, or what if we bottle a root beer or something like that? It gives us the opportunity there. But cans just become, I mean, as you know, it's as we've moved into more of the convenience and grocery and space becomes limited and everything there, they've all moved to more cans just because they can fit more cans in a set than they can bottles, right?
So
you have to answer the adjunct question and then tell us about this beer.
Yeah.
Tell us about this beer too.
Yeah. So, one, I like experimenting with adjuncts on a very, very small scale. We have our Brew Baka series. Like we just released our peanut butter stout.
Oh, is that the 14% beer?
Yeah. No, it's 18%.
18. Sorry.
Let me say this too. I will say as much as I said that, like early on when we were doing the Firkins back in the day, before a lot of people were going.
Yeah,
we did some weird shit.
But I think the one-offs
like that one of the better ones I think was Jamok with York peppermint patties.
Delicious.
Which I think that was okay.
Did you put Skittles in one?
Let me go back. All respect again to Stone Cloud on the cake thing. I think the first one that probably hurt me was when I saw guys putting a bunch of Sour Patch Kids in a Sundown Wheat in a firkin, and that was just like, God damn it, where are we?
Where are we in
all of this? And little did I know that we keep going on, and then you've got again, all due respect, you got Travis Richards putting fucking muffins in a beer, and at the end of the day, they're good beers. I remember one of the guys coming to me too was saying like, oh man, we're gonna go down. They're having a watermelon thing where they've got their soft serve beer and what I was like, wait, soft serve beer, and Cody was like, oh, it's like the best soft serve ice cream in town, and I went down there and he ain't lying, that shit was good.
Yeah.
And but it was just like, man, this is so crazy. And so obviously I'm going to preface again, I say that not out of disrespect.
Right.
It's just so different than where my mind has always been on the fishing. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no.
18% peanut butter stout.
Yeah, we I will say I'm very in the same mind when I get the most giddy and the most excited when like I get to make, an anniversary ale that's a Golden Strong, 12%, 4 ingredients.
Oh, you left that off earlier. 12%?
It's 12%.
Okay.
So your cheeks might be a little rosy.
Right.
It allows me to really.
This is going to be the best PTA meeting I think I've had this year.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This is one malt, one hop. I'm not calling it a smash beer just because I don't think that it's worth mentioning, but it is one hot, one malt, and I got to experiment with a new yeast strain this year that I've always wanted to experiment with in a Golden Strong, and that's when I get the most giddy. And really when, my wheels start turning because you get sciencey with it. You nerd out on making this beer in beer sense, but also at the same time, the exact same week, I'm throwing 20 pounds of Reese's peanut butter cups into a 18% stout, and it just kind of makes one, it just makes me giggle, but two, also my stomach churn and
It's like, man, I love both of those things, but the fact that they're going in there together like kind of hurts. But then it's like,
but wait, I need you to tell me, have you seen something in a beer that prompted you to be like, what the fuck? Like, seriously?
Fried chicken in a mash.
Wait, is that Thomas
in
Jefferson's
New York?
chicken?
No.
I've had a beer in Golden, Colorado at, I wish I could remember the name of the brewery off the top of it. Wasn't that I have to think about it.
It was. I never got to have the beers, but fried chicken and mash. That is just stupid. I think the FDA actually stepped in and
I tried that beer. They called
it
Thomas Jefferson's chicken in a beer at the brewery.
Golly, that's gross.
And I asked them about it. I was like, what is going on? They're like, well, we found an old recipe back from when there was not electricity. And so when they would brew beer, they would also cook dinner. And they would cook the chicken
I guess
in
that makes
the beer
sense.
And then eat the chicken.
Oh man, I got a crazy story. This podcast is going to end up being 3 parts because I'm just going to talk.
Good. Keep going. Yeah.
So we had when I was at Victory.
Yeah.
When I was at Victory. Yes. Yep. When I was at Victory,
I brought it with me this time.
We had so one of my best friends to this day still, like, we started at Victory right at the same time, and he was the QA QC director and just a super brilliant guy. Like, he came from he had a PhD in biochem from Duke and worked in the drug research, early cancer research stuff for a long time, and then just was like, man, I gotta work in beer. I love this. Well, somehow he had connected through the American Society of Brewing Chemists with this old guy who used to work for Schmitz. So long, one of those old, like, Falstaff, one of those old brands that was in Pennsylvania. And so he had brought through a bunch of his old buddies that were worked together at Schmitz, that were all in the QA QC side of things, and gave him a tour, and we ended up hanging out, drinking some beers. And one of the guys told the story about how they went to basically tour this brewery that they were going to purchase. And you talked about the fried chicken, and that made me think of this, or cooking while they were brewing.
Right.
Was that this guy told this story about how he was touring and they were brewing, and the guy was there was this giant chain hanging down in the kettle, and the guy was like, "Well, I've been in a lot of breweries, I've toured a bunch of, like, I've never seen a chain like that. What's the purpose of that?" And he was like, "Oh, let me show you." He reaches in and he pulls this thing up, and there's a fucking turkey at the end of it.
Shut up.
The guy was cooking a turkey in the boil of the beer, and it was just like, holy shit.
Was that a Thanksgiving beer?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So. It was like, man, if the people knew, so no wonder why you're trying to sell this brewery, because you're going bankrupt, because you're essentially cooking turkeys.
Right. I will say that chicken in a beer that I had, so the way they made it at the brewery in Golden. What did you ask me if it was? It might have been Golden City Brew.
Golden.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. I think it was Golden City Brewing Company or something like that. They didn't actually cook a chicken in the beer. They just put I don't know how they did it when they recreated it, but it had the mouthfeel, a more visceral, like fatty mouthfeel, if that makes sense. Like you were almost drinking stock, like that
makes my heart hurt.
We did. We actually did a beer with bacon. We did a Rauch beer with bacon.
Did you really?
Time for there's a famous beer author, Stephen Reichland, who was coming through. So when This Land Press was producing weekly, they had this series. They were trying to do a podcast series called What the Fork, and he was coming through on something, I think, with the food bank. And so they were like, hey, this What the Fork is like, we go into a kitchen. Well, now we want to do a reverse thing where we bring a chef, like, to you guys. And we were thinking, with him coming in, like, what if we did a beer? And I was like, well, what if we did a Rauch beer? Like, what if we did a barbecue?
What kind of beer is that?
Rauch beer is a smoked lager.
A smoked lager.
And so we put like a pound of bacon in the beer, and it was interesting. Like, at the end of the day, with a smoked beer, you're not really gonna taste, but you could kind of see that like salty counterpoint.
Right. So for those listening that
I'm
don't
proud of
understand,
yeah, it was wild.
is it raw bacon? Is it cooked bacon? Like at
I
what point?
I think we cooked. I think we cooked it. Yeah, we didn't.
Yeah.
Because that was
'Cause that'd
kind
be
of one of
kinda
those
gross.
things like,
What do we
no.
do?
So
What
we
are
we
doing
cooked
here?
it and then
Yeah.
threw it in there.
Yeah.
But all that grease kills the head of a beer. So it had
Yeah.
no
Oh,
head, but it was interesting.
As we drink this, tell us about Big Jamok, and then you have a question. I've
Yep.
been hogging the mic.
No,
recently.
So-
you're good. You're
So
good.
Big
I'm-
Jamok's our winter
having a good
seasonal. It's a robust porter. It's just a classic traditional. Again, kind of getting back to that
Beautiful
traditional
color.
style.
Yeah.
It's almost 7%. It's got that definitely needs to be consumed a little bit warmer, but it's definitely got a very like decadent sort of dark chocolate characteristic to it as
Yeah.
you go through. But
I
just
can't wait to have that on cask later.
Is there
one of my favorites.
is there a story?
There
Sorry.
is a story.
Okay.
So I'm getting into that.
Yeah.
So naming beers is honestly, and it's gotten worse as we've gone along. Because when we started, there were about 1,500 breweries. Now there's close to 10,000.
Is it like naming horses where there can't be duplicate names of beers?
Yes,
Yeah.
for the most
Yep.
part.
Yeah.
And so, we're trying to go through, trying to name this beer. We originally launched this beer. It was in a 22-ounce bottle, which are commonly referred to as bombers. So one day it just kind of hit me of this old picture that I had of my grandfather from World War II. He was a B-25.
kidding?
He was a B-25 pilot. And one of the
That's
plane
so
that he was
cool.
sitting in at that point was Big Jamok. It was called Big Jamok. And so
That's so cool.
I just
Cool.
remember that picture, and I was like, okay, this is what we're doing. And Wes was totally on board, and everybody else. And so this is still one of my favorites. Anytime we bottle it, it's like you get this. He passed away when I was my first day of 5th grade. So he passed away in like 1992. Still one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. And what I
so
would give
cool.
to have an adult conversation with him.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But every year we brew this for the first time, and you kind of see this traveling down the line, and my
That's
grandpa
so
smiling
cool.
at me. It really is a great thing.
So
And
is
it
that
just kind of
like-
worked. And so
Is it a caricature of him?
it is. Yeah.
Okay.
So that basically is based on the picture of him sitting
That is so
there.
cool.
And yeah, and so he was just an awesome guy. But my dad had done some research, and then a guy who really loved this beer had sent me something similar, but it was basically a kind of a log of that bomb wing of like all the missions that they flew. And so you can go back and find the planes that he flew and whatever. And so he flew Big Jamok several
That's
times.
cool.
And I think that's the one that he actually flew home.
That is so cool.
But we did a couple of years ago, we did a couple of different variants of Big Jamok, and we used the names of some of the other planes that he flew. Like
I remember
like
that.
we did a like a stronger, like we pulled off the first runnings of that and boiled it down so it was more like 9.5%. I think that was called I can't remember, 009 or something like that. And then Paper Doll was another one. So we named them after all of the things, which was really
That's
cool.
so
That's so
cool.
cool.
And the neat thing is because of this, I've gotten I got a call from somebody up in Wisconsin that was like, my dad he was a bombardier on the Big Jamok. He was on that at one point.
That's so cool.
Like, I don't think they crossed paths, but they were
Right.
like, please, like, can we buy some
Right.
merchandise or whatever? But kind of to be able to tell those stories and have those conversations is really cool. Again, probably one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life, and to be able to kind of honor him and have a great beer, it's one of my favorites, and it's with every seasonal, you probably get this too. You always have people, why don't you make that year round? Well, because people don't want to drink a 7% porter
That's what I was
when
talking
it's,
about.
when it's
with
105
this beer.
degrees in
Yeah.
August.
and we're sweating all the time.
Yeah.
But
Between this one and El Cucuy, which were your last two releases, are probably, no offense to your other beers, which are all good, my two favorites.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
the
El
Black
Cucuy-
IPA.
El
and-
Cucuy is one
yeah.
of those that so I was at Great American Beer Fest early on, and Mitch Steele, who was the head brewer at Stone at that point, he now has a brewery in Atlanta called New Realm. Mitch was up there talking about innovation. I mean, we're talking early innovation, not throwing not throwing chocolate cake and muffins and Sour Patch Kids.
It was
and beer.
still good innovation.
He's talking about innovation and the whole black IPA, and I was like, "What is that?" And so after listening to this,
what is it? What makes it black?
Thing, I go and I find the beer that they made, which was one of their anniversary beers that ended up becoming a beer called Sublimely Self-Righteous Ale. And I was like, "Holy shit, I love this beer!" And so I literally, in terms of like R&D, like it was probably the beer that I've spent the most time, most iterations on. I think we probably brewed 9 different batches of that beer before I was like, all right, that's it. And every year we do it, we change the dry hop a little bit and so on. But so I'm super proud of that beer. I love that beer. But black IPA, basically to me, it's like the challenge is it's not a hoppy stout.
Right.
You know, it's you get the color and you get a very faint characteristic of those dark malts without it being roasty or overwhelming. Like you
got to be a fine line.
Yeah. So you can
get chalky quick.
Yeah, they can get chalky, exactly. And so it comes with what we figured out is using a little bit of Weirmann, which is the German malting company that we use primarily. They make a dehusked malt called Carafa Special, which dehusk basically takes away the bitterness to it. And so we use a little bit of that, but we don't use it in the mashing process. We use it after it moves over into the runoff side of things. So you're really picking up the color and just that very faint hint of those dark flavors without it being overwhelmingly roasty or whatever. So I love that beer and I look forward to it coming out. Last year when we did it, I think I did Tom Gilbert's Beer of the Week. And so I was like, hey, this is coming out, so we're going to do this. I literally had one and then it was gone. Yeah. And I had one El Cucuy last year. And so when it came out this year, I was like, give me yoink, taking this whole thing. And so we had trick-or-treating is a big deal in my neighborhood. And so we had we drank a little bit of that.
I was going to say, you can't be handing out El Cucuy.
I will say that's the only black IPA that I drink anymore.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate it.
It's awesome. Thinking about the future of what Tulsa and our community within the craft beer industry is, I'm curious in your perspective, where do you think our industry in the craft beer is going to move towards within Oklahoma?
Ooh.
He's asking the whale questions.
Hard hitter.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's like,
slide towards us a little bit to make sure you're in that shot.
It's hard too, because it's like, the way that, when we started, if you'd have told me, hey, 13 years from now, there's going to be almost 10,000 brews, I've been like, fuck out of here. You're crazy.
And we have 20% of the market now?
Yeah, I know. And now it's like, and again, now we've got these crazy, adjunct beers or whatever. And so, at this point, it's like I'm done trying to guess what's going to happen. Yeah. But, I think that I think we've probably hit a point where I don't think you're going to see a massive number of breweries open again. I mean, I think maybe we'll see some go away, and maybe you'll see a couple more added to the mix. But I think we're probably at that like healthy level now of breweries. But what happens moving forward? I don't know. I mean, I think that we've all kind of, we all kind of have our thing, and everybody's doing things a little bit differently, which I think is cool. Again, that adds to the whole culture of everything. What does the evolution look like? I don't know. I mean, we're in a world where fucking seltzers are like,
which you haven't done,
a thing, right? Which I haven't done, which we, probably won't do.
Yeah.
Neither will we.
There's definitely, you start thinking about some different ideas of like, okay, how do we cater to that side of things without going there? I mean, there's certainly some of those conversations. But yeah, I mean, I think the great thing is that, I always like to talk about how, like, when I was started, like when I was, I had an older brother who was, definitely an older brother and a dad who, were definitely venturing out, trying different things. I remember, my dad plays bagpipes and he's big into the whole Scottish heritage thing. And so I remember always being out at the Scottish games, and Dad always had Newcastle Brown Ale and McEwen's IPA, which you can't even get here anymore. I haven't told you the last time I had a Nuki Brown either. That's been a long time.
Right.
But two great beers,
Right.
Great traditional beers, but, again, so far out of the realm. And then I started working in college. My college job was at Ranch Acres Wine and Spirits when I turned 21. Love
Stewart
Mary,
family, yep.
love Mary and all those people.
Yep.
And to this day, it's still like one of my favorite places. And Mary's one of my favorite people there is.
Truman the dog.
Truman the dog. Truman wasn't there
No,
when I was
probably not.
there.
Probably not, yeah.
Emily, who's Truman's doggy mommy,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Is that doggy mommy?
Doggy mom. That works.
Yeah, that works.
Sure. I like it. I'm
That works.
coining it. She was in high school at that point.
Okay.
It's starting to show some age here, but it was a great college job, and it kind of exposed me. I started drinking a little bit more of the craft beer stuff, and a couple of the older guys in the fraternity were like, "Oh yeah, I'll try one of those out of the 6-pack." And then by the time I was a senior, I had a couple of my buddies into it, and that's kind of where that crazy Bigfoot story comes in. But we won't go in there. Maybe I'll tell you the guys off air.
There you go.
But you get to the senior year where you got a couple of those guys, but then there was a couple of the freshmen coming in who were interested in home brewing and really interested in a lot of these different beers. So you just started to kind of see this change of people, from what's the cheapest thing I can drink to like, hey, there's actually cool shit to drink out there. And again, at the same time, McNally's was starting. So you start to see just this cultural shift of things. And now, craft beer, which was very much like a niche thing, is more, I hate to use the term mainstream, but it's definitely more normal than it was at that point. So you're just seeing the evolution of that become more towards this sort of European tradition of like the breweries are part of the community, and that's what the people drink because the people support, which I think is great. That's not to say that, macro breweries don't have a place and aren't being consumed. And, there's a time and place for everything, right? So, I think as we continue to go along, I would like to see that the breweries continue to build on that. I think we have an opportunity as an industry and as a group to collectively do more good in the community, and that's ultimately the thing that I want. I think I've told you about this, and I think I've talked to others. I want to get to a point where I've had this whole idea of like a day of service type of thing, whether we do it quarterly or whatever, and rotate it around the breweries to where it's like, hey, we all get together, we pick one thing. Maybe we pick one thing and see it through to the end and then move on to something different. But like, we host, whoever's the host that quarter, like we go out and do our thing and come back and drink at that brewery.
We kind of did that right before COVID, right?
Yeah.
We went up and cleaned the streets with you guys. And
exactly.
That was really cool.
And so, I'd like to see more of that type of stuff happen. And I think as we're getting more kind of, vaccination stuff, we're kind of getting to a point where people are starting to feel a little more comfortable. I think maybe we have the leeway to start doing this stuff, but I feel like, we've hit a point where, people understand, okay, man, these breweries, they're here to stay. This is part of our community. And now I think we have the opportunity to really use that as a vehicle to do some more positive stuff, which is great. So I want to see that continue, which hopefully then will just, make that side of things, make that pie grow a little bit larger. So I think this is, I love the crafted for community. I love that sort of idea and the foundation of those things. And I think that we're fortunate that most of the breweries here in town kind of feel that way and tend towards that. And I think that collectively we have such a wide reach that we can really do a lot of cool shit in this town.
Yeah.
You know, and I think moving forward, the more that we can kind of leverage that and do that together, A, it strengthens that sort of camaraderie between the breweries, but B, it also just, you know, lets the city realize that, hey, like, okay, you know, Tulsa was an oil town. And then when a lot of that left, there was a lot of money that was still here that helped small business kind of become a thing. And so obviously breweries here are small business, and that's part of the essence of this town. We've got a lot of great music history here too, which is also part of that essence. And as that side of thing continues to grow, you know, if we're all lockstep, man, we can make this place a fucking cool place, you know? Not that it isn't already, but you know, in the long term, my goal is that, you know, we've had a lot of brain drain in this town, and I think Elliot referenced that. You know, our you know, the export of bright minds from this is still what plagues this city. I think it's gotten a lot better. I mean, I think that, you know, when I again kind of going back to college, I look at all my close buddies from college that, you know, went to New York or Denver or Dallas or wherever. You know, as time has gone along, I think people have said, no, Tulsa's pretty cool. I'm going to stay here. But my goal in life is to develop this place to a point where my kids don't want to leave, because I don't want it. My little sister lives in London right now, and that's hard enough. And I don't want to. I can't imagine not living in the same town as my kids. And so I want my kids to have the opportunity to realize whatever they want to do in life, that they can do it right here, because this really is a great city. And one of my favorite things about Tulsa is when you talk to people who are like, man, I went to Tulsa once on business, and I ended up bringing my family back because it was such a cool town. And it really is. I mean, that was the thing when I lived on the East Coast. Like, people were like, oh, Tulsa? What, like Oklahoma? Like, why are you trying to go back there?
You're still living in
because
TVs?
The place is awesome. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I think moving forward, that's where I want it. That's what I want it to be, and I want it to go in that.
I think that's a good place to end it, right? I mean, that's golden. Because go ahead.
I mean, I can back you up on, you know, you've lived in Germany, you've traveled through all sorts of other cultures, and from my own history and what I've also gone through, I've lived in Germany, lived in a few different continents actually, but I always come back to Tulsa because of what this town has to offer. And I think we've developed a really great and rich culture here that is going to be able to keep people here, your kids here, my kids here that don't exist yet. But because I don't even think that we're even close to what our
that was almost
potential
a
is.
Catastrophe.
That it was almost a catastrophe.
At the end of the day, I mean, to sum that all up, at the end of the day, it's about the people. And, you know, in the last year, you know, politics and, you know, view on COVID and all of that stuff has caused so much contention and so many, you know, so much anxiety and all that. At the end of the day, like, people here are able to get past that. And when it comes to the interaction with each other, like, there's just genuinely good people here. And I think when you have that, that's the greatest thing that we have to offer, not only in this town, but in the state total, that, like, you know, if we can continue to build on that and build these relationships and build this community where we have the ability to, you know, just be kind to each other and to support each other, you know, I think we continue to grow and build on that. Now, in saying all that, you know, people always like, oh, you know, Tulsa's the next Austin or whatever. I don't want that shit. You know, it's like people always like, I don't want the traffic. I don't want the madness there. Now, do we need to have some infill and grow a little bit more to support, you know, a lot of the great business? Yes, absolutely. But, and I think there's some things that, you know, not to use the term exploit, there's some things that we exploit. there's things that we can continue to grow on and do better there that will make the city better and shine more. But at the end of the day, it's the people and it's the goodness, it's the quality, it's the relationships that we all have. And I think that's things that are not present in a lot of other cities, just because of the pace, right, the mentality of everything. But it's always been here in Oklahoma and key. And I think that we can continue to grow on that and not to be all rah, but but love each other and support each other. And I think that's what's great about Tulsa and Oklahoma.
Yeah. And I'll say this as we let you go 90 plus minutes later, the point of this podcast is to kind of delve into and figure out how not only the beer industry and the brewery industry, but food and nightlife and culture and all that can help put Tulsa on the map and elevate Tulsa from a national perspective. And you singularly did that for the craft beer industry in being what you talked about, the trailblazing and what you had to do and what you had to go through in order to help create the culture that now exists. So cheers to you, Eric Marshall.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Making the hair
but
on
it's
my
the
neck
truth.
Cheers. Cheers to you.
Guys.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And love the conversation and the beers, and
yeah,
look forward to more, whether it's on the mic or
absolutely.
not. So,
that's right.
Cheers, guys.
We'll be right back after the break.
Cheers.
And that is Eric Marshall, the Godfather.
Yeah, he didn't have
Great,
have a pinky ring or anything.
He did not, but great conversation.
Great conversation.
And this beer, man, Big Jamok.
Golly, I always go back to it.
It's so fucking good.
So good.
I literally might wrap this up and then go have it on Cask.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think so.
Unfortunately have an event, so I'm going to miss that. And I am sad in my heart.
In my heart.
In my heart. But that was such a great conversation.
Yeah, it was.
Such heartfelt answers from him.
Is this from your beer spill?
It is from a beer
it
spill.
is.
So,
but you caught it. It was great.
Impressively caught it.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
If we were going to sum up, Eric's conversation in one word, I think it would be community.
It would be community.
I think it would be community. Like, he's just such a champion for not only you and Cabin Boys, but for the entire craft beer industry, especially in Oklahoma and especially in Tulsa.
Yeah. His history with me, I just want to say he alone has really shaped me as a brewer and as a business owner because of the manner and the way that he was able to influence my decisions and really encouraged me within owning my business, starting the business. And not only when we weren't started as a business and open, I go back to my moment of crisis, which is one of the darkest moments of my life, and maybe we'll touch on that later. But he helped me out in such a intense and his hospitality and community driven mindset, being able to actually invest his time into my business in a way that kept my business going when I couldn't. That's really,
it's huge.
It's huge for me. And I hold that memory really dear to my heart. And he's someone that, has a lot of clout and a lot of heart within what he does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and you guys touched on that a little bit, but you brought the whale questions. Good job.
Thank you very much.
The big questions.
I brought the big questions.
Yeah, you really did. It was fun. We're not going to tell you who's next. It'll be a surprise.
That's right. Yeah,
it'll be a surprise. But we're having fun.
It might be from someone right across the street.
Might be. But we're having fun on the tasting room, as you can tell by all the drinks
absolutely
and conversations.
Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been a lot of fun.
We'll see you next week.
Cheers.